What's the wildest thing you've seen while deep-sea diving? I was diving the day before a hurricane on a small South Pacific island. Out of nowhere, a black and white venomous sea snake wrapped itself around my arm. Apparently, this happens from time to time before major storms. They can sense it and look for things that are heading towards the shore, so they don't have to put in so much effort to get out of the sea. As soon as I was in the shallows, it uncurled and headed up the beach where it hid under a breadfruit tree. I thought I was going to get bitten to death by a snake at sea. Turns out I was just a taxi for a very calm, but rather rushed reptile. If it wants to bite you, it's not going to climb onto you first. Well, you've never met my ex-wife. I once had diarrhea at 100 feet below sea level. That sucked. It was amazing how warm it made me at depth, but it was a nightmare to clean up. Being wrapped in a warm suit of my own diarrhea 100 feet underwater is now my greatest fear. It was Christmas time 1998. I was at home mourning the loss of my girlfriend. She wasn't dead, she was just a whore. But anyway, this was in my surf club days. One of the greatest moments of my surf club life was when I got my PADI dive ticket so I could go diving for the Coast Guard who were in the neighboring building. This was a great moment because it gave me and my immediate family access to the Coast Guard/surf club bar. I was popular that year all of a sudden. So there I am, bitterly complaining to no one about my ex-girlfriend, because they are all drinking at the surf club, when all of a sudden my lounge is lit up with blue and red police lights. A policeman had driven down the driveway and parked outside and decided that knocking was too hard, so he turned on his lights. My father was sitting in front of the car, laughing at my face when the officer told me to get in the car. There had been a boat accident. 3 guys had taken a boat out and managed to sink it. One had made it to the shore and raised the alarm, but he didn't know where his friends were. The commotion had spread into the bar at the surf club, and it was realized quickly that the on-call diver had been drinking for a few hours. The time is 7 p.m. at this stage. Enter my father. My son is the diver for the surf club. He's at home, probably complaining about his whore ex-girlfriend, he proclaimed. I'm guessing, but I would suspect he would have stood up before declaring that. And with that, I was conscripted. I was on the Coast Guard boat with all my kit and getting the rundown. 22-foot boat, stuck anchor, middly choppy seas, Tanner's Rock, 2 missing. Tanner's Rock was a popular fishing spot, a large rock formation about 30 meters deep that fish tended to rather near. I assume it had an underwater nightclub or something. I don't really know what attracts fish to rocks. I am suited up and my game face is on. It's now close to 8 p.m. I'm about to roll backwards into the sea when the skipper says, "Well, I don't see any sharks, good luck." Over I go. They had dropped a rope with a sandbag attached, so when we got to Tanner's Rock, I could guide myself down. I grab the rope and start descending. The dark closes in and the lights on my helmet and wrist penetrates far less than I hoped. You can't really crash dive 40 meters, or you will get narked pretty hard, and you can't crash surface from 40 meters, or you will get the bends. So slowly does it. But there is no sound, and it's a closed dark bubble with swaying edges, so you need to make your mind pay attention to anything other than the shapes in the water, because you will see things. There are sharks and squids and octopus and demons all just outside of your line of vision. Your mind plays major tricks on you in these types of situations. It's so dark you can't see the surface at all. No stars, no moon. Is that a shark? No, it's fine. Bump. The knots in the rope are 10 meters apart. 3 more to go. Bump. The dark seems to be getting closer somehow. Bump. Nearly there. The bag has stirred up the bottom a bit, and there is less visibility. I didn't see the bottom at first because the back of the boat came out of the dark at me. It was nose down, stem up standing at about 45 degrees from the bottom. This was the moment I realized there could be 2 bodies in the boat. The lights now had something to bounce off of, so I could see a little more than before, and I started to check the boat. The cabin door was closed, so I knocked. I have no idea what would have happened if they had knocked back, but there was nothing. I had to gently but violently rip the door off and repeat the process for the onboard toilet room, but that was thankfully empty too. I grabbed the EPIR beacon, which was in a plastic bag, meaning it didn't go off. The anchor had gotten stuck, and the winch was strong enough to pull the front of the boat down. I think the finding was that a wave came over the front and flooded the front section of the boat, and then the winch took over and happily wound the boat to the anchor. Then it jammed up on the chain and stopped. I undid the bolt on the anchor, and the boat started to slowly rise. I tied the sandbag rope to the bollard on the front and started the long ascent back into the dark. I started thinking about the two missing men, floating around drowned, just beyond my sight in the dark, imagining hands reaching out for me, sharks eating them and looking for more humans. Bump, check my watch. I have to go slow enough that I do 1 minute per bump. I could do 2, but better safe than sorry. Let me tell you that it's a long minute. Up we go again, bump again, timer again. This is easy, you have done this before. Start rising again, bump. I am about 10 meters down with an overactive imagination when it suddenly goes nuts. Beneath me, I can see movement, fast movement. With one hand, I point my light, while my other hand goes for my diver knife. A huge, solid object is just below my feet. It slides up my leg and I strike it with my diver's knife, only to realize that it's the effing boat. The boat had risen up quickly, displacing more water and accelerating the ascent. The boat goes past in a few seconds, and in my relief, I actually laugh. I resheath my diver's knife and then I realize my mistake. The rope is gone. That whore boat has stolen my rope. So I do what my training tells me to do, and I piss myself. I look at the watch and it's been a minute. I start to rise with no reference points and no guide. After what feels like a year, I surface to the yells and abuse from the Coast Guard trying to figure out what to do with the capsized but new floating boat. I swim over and get back on the boat. We managed to flip it over and tow it back to shore. I had to debrief with the police and then went to see my dad. I get a Viking hero's welcome, beer and cheering, and much storytelling was had. Turns out all 3 of the boat people got to shore. 2 were close to each other and went home and got drunk while the 3rd raised the alarm. The only scare I've had is some jack in a yacht cruising through our dive location at full throttle. You could hear the boat coming for a solid minute or 2 before it flew over our heads. Our boat had a dive flag on it, and we had a buoy with the dive flag on it. They didn't even slow down. Barracuda, sharks, rays, manatees, dolphins, all cool. Humans are the dangerous ones. I work as a paddling coach on lakes. I swear, the number of times I've attempted to gesture at a pleasure craft for them to stop, only to have some dude in cargo shorts wave back like an idiot, is higher than I can count. I free dove to about 160 feet in Dean Blue Hole in the Bahamas. It's where a lot of free diving world records are set. Super neat place, Google a picture. Anyway, I'd never really been past 100 feet while freediving, but this was the perfect place to do it. No current, and there's ropes to keep you straight and allow a slight pull back up. Scary part is that you become pretty strongly negatively buoyant after like 60 feet, so you're basically dropping down while doing nothing and using very little air. So I'm feeling good and counting the lines that mark depth, and all of a sudden feel pressure like my trachea is going to collapse. And realize I've counted to the line that's around 160 feet or so. Very scary moment because I wasn't sure if my body could take the depth or if I had gone too far and wouldn't have enough air to get back up, which is a much slower and more air-intensive process. I've been scuba diving a few times and really enjoy it, but the thought of this kind of free diving makes me want to throw up. I saved someone from drowning while scuba diving. Person had an epileptic seizure at 85 feet of water in a pitch-black cavern that I was diving also. I was hovering above, just watching the flashlights move about, when I noticed one flashlight not moving. I swam down and was met with the other diver with no regulator in their mouth, eyes open and just on their knees. The diver's buddy was next to them and in complete shock to what was going on and was not assisting whatsoever. 15 years of diving and instructor training came over me like it was second nature. I thought her regulator just came out, so I popped mine out and offered it to her. That's when I noticed she had mentally checked out. I popped my second regulator in my mouth and attempted to put my first regulator in her mouth, but her teeth were completely clenched. I then pressed the purged button to get air into her mouth and noticed her cheeks moving, so I know air was getting in there. That was good enough for me. I grabbed her under her arm and got the regulator flowing in her mouth and swam to the opening of the cavern. Then we went up 60 feet to get to the surface. Once on the surface, I did everything I was trained to do. Dumped her weights, got her on her back, and started towing to land. As I'm towing her in, she's regurgitating all the water she swallowed and inhaled. It seemed like gallons of water. I got her to land where other divers assisted me in getting all her gear off. She was breathing fine and alive, but in shock for a while, and slowly came around like nothing happened. We were very lucky that we were only 10 minutes into the dive, or we would have both been bent and spending time in a hyperbaric chamber. The crazy thing is, she didn't tell anyone she had epilepsy, and when we later reviewed her consent form, she checked off no to epilepsy. I put myself at risk shooting up to the surface like that, but if I came across that situation again, I would not hesitate to save someone's life. Well, here's my story. I was diving in a local pond with a group of much more advanced cave divers than I was. I was leading the dive, asked to get used to pressures and responsibilities of leading the procession. They were mentoring me. It is a Texas puddle, visibility 10 feet max, not too deep. The horrible visibility makes it impossible to navigate by compass, so we follow a line put by other divers. These lines go from one sunken item to another. I know I'm about to hit a small sunken boat. I don't remember which one, but there are a few similar in a row, in a similar state of decay. Being first in the group, I get to the boat and see someone's black army boot sticking out from the inner quarters. Curious thing is, it looks somewhat new, not like items you find on the bottom. It was hard to see, too much muck in the water. I touch the boot thinking it is by itself, but it won't lift, like it's attached to something heavy. I put my hand further in and feel the leg continuing out. Pants, the calf, and I see the second leg now. Big letter F, right? I turn around and show a sign for the emergency ascent to the group behind me. Everyone has a sour face. No one wants to surface, but it is a rule that if one says up, others in a group must abort. No questions. They wanted me to explain with signs why, but what is a diver's sign for a cadaver? I rush toward the surface, even though trying to stay calm and take time. We are on the lake's surface and I have this adrenaline rush. I can't breathe enough. I tell them there's a body down there. I see rolling eyes from everyone. A fun bunch, right? So I describe in detail what I saw. We go down, I don't lead anymore, we make a group search pattern for the line, but once we locate it, we don't know if we should go forward or backwards, as there are a number of boats on the line and who knows which one the body is in. Well, we find all boats before finding the original one. Our customary leader goes into the cabin of the boat and we wait. I'd say he was rather courageous at this point. He went right in. Then he emerges from the cloud of muck and tells us all to surface. So, gluing information together from what we learned later on, it turns out the police had a body recovery training in the same lake on the same day. When they went for lunch, they stuffed their fully dressed anatomically correct rubber doll in one of the sunken boats for a few hours of safekeeping. I died a little that day. Not my story, but my parents. They like to scuba dive when traveling and have gone several times over the years. Once they visited Mexico and went diving there before I was born. I'm not sure where they went exactly, but my mom was slightly lower down than my dad and looking at the ocean floor. He was looking up and around. My mom had on a golden necklace that was floating in the water around her. It was a sunny day and a fairly shallow dive, so it was sparkling. From my mom's point of view, she was going along having a grand old time looking at the sea critters below, when suddenly my dad grabbed her and started frantically shaking her arm to get her attention. She looked up and the barracuda was directly in front of her, closer than was comfortable and staring intently, scary teeth on full display. It was focused on the shiny necklace and was just hovering there, transfixed. She slowly moved up her hand to cover the necklace, and they slowly and calmly moved away from it, and it took off without bothering them anymore, but still pretty unsettling, and taught my mom to be a little more aware of her surroundings when diving. I got the bends once. I was careful, followed my charts and my computer, had appropriate depths and surface time, but I didn't drink enough water, so I was all out of whack. Felt fine until I got home, mild headache. Then I woke up and it was just pain in my left arm. Elbows, fingers, couldn't even bend them without bad pain. My headache was intense and I was so dizzy. Called my older, more experienced dive buddy and I got rushed to the hospital. Docs got me hooked up and fluids, checked my dive logs while the decompression chamber was set up, and then got me in there with a nurse. 8 hours in a tube about the length of a car but as wide as maybe a double bed. I was on oxygen and hooked up to an IV. And it was so crazy loud, with all the air rushing in. As soon as I got to quote-unquote depth, the pain vanished. It was scary. I'm fine now, obviously, but I wasn't allowed to dive for a month, which sucked. But hey, the dives were pretty great. Night diving is incredibly creepy. You don't realize how dark the ocean is until you are in it. I don't like closing my eyes in a swimming pool during the day. F that night dive crap. Fun fact, closing your eyes in a swimming pool instantly summons a great white shark. Thanks for supporting Ask Planet.